to the Starting Over podcast. I am your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos, and on this show we talk about the strategies, tactics, and mechanics behind the game of HeroClix. It is warm, very warm here in Kansas City right now, and to accommodate you so you don't hear this mild hum in the background, I have turned off my fan. So if I catch the vapors during the show, you all just bear with me. Hopefully I'll be able to come back and be conscious. Okay, today's show is quite interesting. I got a PM on AC Realms from a listener, and his name is Rockets21, and pretty much what Rockets wanted to know was what was my opinion on stop powers. And we sort of talked about stop last show. It's support, telekinesis, outwit, probability control, and perplex. Okay? And so just like last show, how we looked at 300, 400 point games, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give us a general scale of working with, so we can work with, so that we can see like, at what part of the game is this worthwhile? Okay, so let's start looking at support. Okay, support in the low-level games, your 300, 400 point games. Unfortunately, they are one of those. It's one of those powers in which it could be completely useless, or change the tide of the game, or waste your actions. You need to determine with support, is it I need it right now power? I have a whole bunch of frail glass cannons that I need to keep repaired, or do I want to make sure that this super uber dreadnought that I have doesn't die? So support is really weighted on in lower points, and I'm going to say lower points is 300, 400, barely hitting 500. Support will sometimes be useful. You don't have to have it, and if you do have it, it's really best to have it on a figure that doesn't have it on click 1. So you're not really paying premium for it, okay? So maybe click 2, 3, you AE into support somehow, or you have some magical medical power, or even, you know, you AE into a team ability that gives you like X-Men team ability, Teen Titans team ability, something that allows you to heal. Okay, so support, if we put on the grand scale of 1 through 10 of how important it is in 300 to 500 point games, I would put it at about a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, it's moderately important. You don't necessarily have to have it. In a lot of modern age games, your figures are usually dead before you have the option to use support. So that's just something to consider. Okay, now above 500 points, and I'm just going to lop this in as above 500 points, and I will even make myself a nice little note that just says above 500 points. Okay, above 500 points, support is probably about an 8 or 9, and the main reason is this: you have enough figures that can take hits and absorb damage, that being able to heal them will be ridiculously awesome. Also, you have figures that have way longer dials. One of my favorite units to heal is Onslaught. Why, you may ask? Onslaught is annoying as fire, okay? He really is. And when they changed the gigantic rules, the colossal rules, to say, you know, only the ones that say in their special rules that they can't be healed, or they can do X, Y, and Z, or can't have feats, then that just opened up a wonderful wild, wild west for the new era of colossal figures. And with Onslaught, I'd like to have some form of support, either in X-Men team ability or just straight up support. My biggest friend to team up with Onslaught is Elixir, because no matter what, Elixir can exchange clicks with Onslaught, and Onslaught can always make elixir functional. So that's the big thing I like about him. But another thing for people looking for their big games that are 700, really, let me take that back, 800, 900, 1,000 points or more, then support is essential, because you can heal Galactus. And I just pissed off like 100 venues in me saying this. You can heal Galactus, you can heal Tester, you can heal Dormammu, you can't heal a certain point of a Uatu. But if you're playing a Uatu, anyway, I'm not going to say that. But you can heal your Colossals. So in those higher point games, having 2 or 3 cheap medics that hide somewhere, or a Blackest Night Adam, or some other magical medic. Deadman, I think, is also pretty good. Also, if you're playing Asgardians and you have Asgardian deities, the best medic ever is a Valkyrie. Best medic ever. Okay, 38 points, 10 attack. Can do damage if you need it to. So I digress. So support, when we're looking at 500 below, we're looking at it ranking about a 5. Above 500 points in those big dog games, support is really important, because it will swing the tides of games. And definitely I've seen with Onslaught where he has that sweet click and someone comes in and knocks him past that sweet click, and you're just like, well, you're almost depressed, and then you realize, like, oh yeah, I can heal him. So that's how I see support. Next up is telekinesis. I'm going to make this statement about telekinesis, and a lot of people might lynch me on this. As common phrase I've said. Telekinesis in the modern age is very important in the first 3 to 4 turns. Past that, most strategies do not use telekinesis in a planned out, thought out way. Telekinesis is an after effect, or it's like, oh, I can TK this guy again, or I can hurl out more of my crew for them to go, like you're throwing them out of an airplane in a halo jump. Okay, telekinesis, unfortunately, is one of the worst planned out powers for most organized teams. Okay, and here's why I say this. Okay, when you think of TK, what are you thinking about? And I'll give you a moment. Okay, and if you need to pause. If you need longer, that's fine. It's me and you just talking to one another. If you're talking back, and yes, I'm going to say yes, I agree. You mainly have telekinesis for First Strike. Telekinesis came into the game as a dominant force after flyers couldn't carry flyers anymore. You have this awesome reach that you can get with TK. You're technically giving a character +8 to their swing, and swing is a character's range plus whatever their running shot or hypersonic speed movement would be. In the case of melee figures, their swing would be how far they can charge, okay, or do a charge-like effect. Okay, so what you're saying is, it's like, hey, melee character, you have a 10 movement in charge, so you have a swing of 5. TK gives you, in this modern era, a swing of 13. Oh, wow. 13, that's pretty cool. I can actually catch up with Flash. I can actually hurt that guy that's shooting me in that bush. I might be able to smash Batman. Those things come to mind of why we have TK. No one really says, like, in the middle of the game, when my opponent is in the middle of the map, I'm going to use TK to retrieve my figures from the front lines back to me where my medic is. Or I'm going to retrieve my units from the front lines so that they can have a turn so I can AE them into blah, 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 blah. Green Goblin. my Norman Osborn is going to turn into Green Goblin. Or no one even says this with the new mechanic that's coming up. And for those people who do not like spoilers, just like fast forward about a minute. With the new Ant-Man and Wasp, where they split and come back together, they're a single base, so they can be TK'd. Okay, so I can TK them up and then, you know, have them attack, but I can TK them back so I can split, so I can bring, you know, this version of Ant-Man or this version of Wasp out that I need. Okay, and for those people that don't want spoilers, spoiler is over. Okay, so when we look at that thinking, you know, most people only think I'm moving pieces forward with telekinesis. They're not thinking I'm moving pieces backward with telekinesis, or even sideways. There's no optional deployment but forward. And so what happens is telekinesis in average play in 300 points to 500 points, I would rank TK's point value probably about a 4 because of how poorly it's used. That first 3 turn value, it's an 8, but the rest of the game, it's about a 4. It might even drop to a 3. Okay, because people don't think of how to use it, and they're like, oh, but the stealthers are there. Oh my gosh, the stealthers. We can TK objects at stealthers. In all honesty, if your plan of solving for stealth is to be able to TK an object at them, you must be the grandest tactician in the world to see the future, or you're actually having some lack of foresight. And I say this respectfully. The main reason I say this is that because TK, for you to solve for stealth, is so situational. The object, your TKer, and the figure that you're targeting have to be in this magical triangle of all can see each other. Okay. The next thing is you're only going to do a okay amount of damage with the TK object. The last thing is most TKers that you're using, unless you're playing around with Magneto, are going to have very low attacks. You're looking at 8, 9. You're lucky if you get a 10. So on average, you're not really going to have that go off. And then also the last thing that's annoying is that it's a ranged attack, so they're going to get hindering terrain bonus. So, I mean, these are things that people don't think about when they say, well, we changed TK, yay. And I was right there, was like, yeah. And then in more play testing, I was like, I'm hardly ever using this. While it is a great option, there's better things that you can do. Okay. In high point games, TK in multiple spades, TK yo-yo. For those people who are unaware of a TK yo-yo, it was invented during the Icon Superman era, or let me rephrase that. It was notorious during the Icon Superman era, in which you get Icon Superman, and you TK up the first TKer. And really, actually, you had like 3 TKers on that team. I've done that. It was so mean. You TK up the first TKer. Then you TK out Superman. The second TKer would TK out Superman again. He would like shoot and then like hypersonic speed all the way back. It was ridiculous. But that was back when, you know, you could hypersonic speed and get your full range. Now with half range, people still use TK yo-yo. I know one thing I used TK yo-yo with was Despero from, I think it's Arkham Asylum. I was about to say Arkham City. Wow, you could tell where my mind's been. With Arkham Asylum, Despero was awesome because he had TK, but then he also had that placement power. So I would just TK up Despero, and then I have him like walk, or let me rephrase that, place figures that I wanted in certain spots, in those spots I wanted. So TK yo-yos. If you plan around it, it's very tactically sound. That means that you're playing for a TK for past the first 3 turns. So then the value of it goes up because you're thinking about it. All right. Next up is Outwit. And if you told me what's the value of Outwit literally a year ago from now, I would have said 10, like automatically, if I was going to put on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best. I'd have been like 10, 10, 10. Are you an idiot? How can you not say 10? With all that's come out lately, with the Infinity Gauntlet progressing, with so much Power Cosmic and Quintessence, and people looking to exploit the Infinity Gauntlet, I have to say Outwit is a 7 or 8. It's not a 10. And the moment that Power Cosmic comes in, it drops to a 2. Now, you might say, like, wow, that's a steep decline. Yes, and it might average out around 5, maybe even 4, on your average team building. Is it as important? Is it super important anymore in the game? I would say it's not super important, but your outwitters have to be smarter than the average bear. Gone are the days of, oh, look, I have Question, and Question is going to allow me to have this boost in damage or this boost in mobility because my opponent's ability that's annoying the heck out of me is gone. Or Question is going to go out there and it's going to stop their probability control or their perplex or whatever else. Those days are almost dead. Not just for the fact that Question is going to be retired soon, or even Holiday Killer, who was my next cheap, awesome attacker. But cheap Outwit, as it stands now, is on decline. You're looking at specialty Outwits. Now, if you have a specialty Outwit like the Adam Warlock Unique from Galactic Guardians, the one in the classic outfit, not the new outfit. People who've read comic books for a while know what I mean. If you're looking at like the Yellow Jacket, Scroll Yellow Jacket from Secret Invasion, when you have outwits like that that can get past Power Cosmic or negate Power Cosmic, those are still 10s. When you have specialty things that pretty much ignores Power Cosmic, those are still 10s. I would even say like the leader's ability to outwit 2 powers as long as one of them is not a defensive power. That's a 10. Really with the leader, that one's 11. Okay, that one's off the scale. But because so many figures are going to be put in that you can't outwit me category, Outwit's value has dropped. And so when I would say is this: for every 2 outwitters you're thinking of, you're better off with 1 probability controller, or you're better off with a pulse waiver. You're better off with a probber and a pulse waiver, because that's how you're going to be getting around things now more so than Outwit. Still good, 300 to 500 points. Fit it in if you can, or if your figure has it, don't be a slouch in using it. Unless there's a lot of cheap Outwit coming and teams are comprised of 4 figures in that 300 realm, I don't see Outwit being as dominant or as valuable. I'm not saying it's not valuable. I don't see it as valuable because most teams that we're seeing in the meta now are 2-man teams or 3-man teams, and 2-man teams, you can outwit one of them, but the other one's guaranteed to be unoutwittable. So, going on, probability control. Probability control is a 10. And probability control has been a 10 since it's been introduced into the game. And probability control will continue to be a 10. The thing about probability control for a while now is probability control is not just limited to cheap figures, and theme team prob is another thing that really degrades the value of Outwit, because you can't outwit a figure's ability to theme team prob. You see what I'm saying? the probability control is generated from the keyword theme effect, not a power that they actually possess, so you can't outwit it. Same logic of why you can't outwit gauntlet powers. Okay, so when you're looking at theme team probability control, it is ridiculously good in some cases. For some people I play with, they think that the only thing that's good of theme team probability control is it's there just to put tokens on their characters. But outside of that, when we look at normal probability control, it's great. And if positioned correctly, it turns games. And I've seen people pick probability control with the gauntlet so many times. For the main reason the reality gem gives you probability control, there's no excuse for you not to have it. If you play that, I'm playing the support gauntlet tech, you can play the reality gem, and you can play the TK mind control gem, and you have the like perfect prob TKer for a good amount of the game. You're bound to have one of the two for most of your clicks. Okay, so those are things for you to think about. I, in all honesty, feel that probability control for every 300 points, just bear with me when I say this. For every 300 points you add, you need at least one probber. So if you go over 300 points, I'll sort of do like WizKids does. If you go over 300 points, you need to add another probber. So big games, you need a whole bunch. A whole bunch as you can fit without breaking your rules. If you're limited to like high point games, if you're limited to like 4 or 5 figures, then 2 would be enough. Or if you feel a little bit more comfortable, 2 probability controllers per 5 characters, including the characters that have prob. So that would give you like a really good basis. Now you might say, wow, that's a lot of probability control. Yes. Yes, it is. And why is that? Because right now, the main things that is slowing people down or stopping people is failed rolls. That's it. And when people miss rolls, it's more frustrating, because then it's not an issue of, oh look, I didn't do my formation right. It's just, you know, the dice worked against you. The other thing about probability control that's necessary is stationing it so that in this era of running shot pulse wave being king, having a prob that's possibly outside the range of the pulse wave blast allows you to sort of put a hedge on your bets and making sure that the pulse waver has a chance of failure. Okay, and that is so essential, is making sure that pulse waver has a chance of failure. So because you will need to save that figure that's being single target pulse waved. Probability control by far, I feel, is one of the powers that's most decisive decisive and divisive in the HeroClix community, because it's proven undoubtedly that it wins games. Not only does it win games, it's pretty much required for championships, just like hypersonic speed. Try to look back and find a championship team that didn't have some form of probability control, and you're going back probably far if you can find it. Okay, probably Lamp. Lamp is probably the only team that didn't require probability control. Anyway, so overall, when it comes to prob, man, it's a 10. I think it will continually be a 10 unless you encounter, you know, a figure like a Mortis or Danger or somebody that just shuts down prob with a trait. And I think, unfortunately, well, I don't know, it depends on your viewpoint, fortunately or unfortunately, prob in and of itself will have some sort of checks and balances to it. Definitely because of upcoming figure. I hate to do this because I've been pretty spoiler heavy so far, and this isn't like a spoiler episode. Okay, let me go talk about him, since I feel that it's probably pretty necessary at this stage. I think this figure is probably going to be the future of probability control. I don't think we're going to be paying sub 50 points for prob anymore. I think we're going to be paying 50 points and up for prob. But this one's ridiculous. Harvey Dent, from the upcoming Dark Knight Returns set, or the Batman set. Just call it the Batman set. Let's look at them real quick. Bring up whatever little way that you're going to look at your clicks stats if you want to. You can look at a couple of previews in various places. Okay, first off, he has, I believe, in Harvey Dent. And his friendly characters adjacent to Harvey Dent at the beginning of this turn can use willpower until the end of the turn. That trait alone is worth 60 points. You've given this character willpower. You've given a bunch of your characters willpower, with or without the gauntlet. So yeah. Next, he has prob for the first 2 clicks. So he gives adjacent friendly characters willpower, and he has probability control. Okay. Next, he has his special power, the Scum Should Be Afraid of Me. It's for each opposing character adjacent to Harvey Dent. At the beginning of your turn, you may modify his attack or defense values. Choose per character by +1 until the beginning of your next turn. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And also considering that he has like flurry and incap while he has those powers, that's pretty good. And then he is outwit on the later end of his dial. He's not super deep, mind you, but you know, you're sort of keeping him back at a distance and on hindering terrain. So I think that figure is probably going to be the decisive figure to determine where probability is. I think he's going to be a high-level meta piece. If it comes out before Gen Con, we might see him. I don't know. No guarantees. And I'm only going to just say, wow, that would be a game changer, sort of. So, anyway, wrapping it up on probability control, I think that it's a great power. I think I wouldn't say it's needed in the game, but it changes the game, and it makes it so that the one-hit quitters don't always get away with massive damage, or that they do get away with massive damage. And really the best way to control anyone in this game is tokens and rerolls. So, okay, moving on to the last power, which is Perplex. Perplex in and of itself is another power that's been so abused that we have multiple rules on it, and some people would probably end up saying that the rules that we had, making it so that it only lasted during your turn, was the good old days, because it would stop a lot of abuse, and it also made Oracle awesome, but that's another story. In contact with the Oracle, not Oracle, sorry. But when it comes to Perplex, I have to echo the same sentiments as probability control. It is a 10. Now, bear with me, and I'm going to sort of put it in a little bit more complex terms. Perplex is good on any team because stat manipulation is good in any form and fashion. The more you manipulate stats in your favor, the more likely the outcomes you desire will happen. Now, I know that sounds like a whole bunch of like new age mumbo jumbo, like imagine it and you will see it and it will become real before you, and I summon the power of cheeseburger. No, but let's just look at this realistically. I look at a figure on the table, and I have my perplexers, or in a recent game I have multiple perplexers. I'm able to say to myself, in Perplexers 1's range, is my opponent and my friendly attacker. And Perplexers 2's range is my opponent. And Perplexers 3's range is my friendly attacker. So I have 2 that can see my friendly attacker, and I have 2 that see my opponent. So I have the ability to make the decision of I can manipulate 2 stats or 1 stat on my attacker. I can do +2 attack, +2 damage, +2 defense, or +1 attack, +1 defense, or +1 attack, +1 damage, or +1 range, or +1 movement, whatever I might need. Okay? But with my opponent, I can also say, well, I also could choose like, I have another attacker. I don't really want to, just waste my primary attacker. I can lower my opponent's attack defense by 2, or I can say, man, I know he's going to retaliate on me if I hit him. Either way it goes, I want him to have lesser damage, so I can lower his damage by 2 and up one of my friendly attacker stats by 1. Okay, so it all comes down to what outcomes do you want to have happen. If you want the outcome of I want to smash this dude in the face, then the perplexes are going to reflect that. You're going to have +2 on attack, -1 on defense, and then you're going to blast him. Or if you're going to say is, I'm not confident in my rolls right now, but one thing I can do is I can stop him from hurting me. I can make his 4 attack a 2 and all my characters have him vulnerable. Oh wow, he's not going to hurt me and he only has 1 main attacker. There we go. So regardless if I hit or miss, if I hold off the 2 perplexes at the end, I just perplex down his damage to a 2 and I'm safe. So it's the outcomes that you want. Perplex also allows a person to come back and say, hey, I want to solidify a form of dominance over my opponent that's definitive. And I know that's very like alpha male doggish when I'm saying that. But multiple perplexes allows you to do something in the game that other powers don't allow you to do. And definitely after they changed it, it allows you to be hyper aggressive with small chances of failure. Again, that's why I would say if we were going to say a yin and yang, prob is the yin and the yang is perplex. They counterbalance each other. Why do you have perplex? So that the odds are in your favor. Why do you have prob? So that the odds are always in your favor and preferably not in your opponent's favor. They can completely fight each other, or they can work together as this grand circle. Okay, so perplex makes an attacker with 4 damage into an attacker with 7 damage. And perplex makes an attacker with 10 attack, a attacker with 13 attack. It allows so much ridiculous silliness. You have a figure with a range of 10 now has a range of 13. You almost can't be retaliated on. Or your alpha strike is so far ahead that you know that he can't prob you. Or she can't prob you. So that's the thing about perplex. Perplex allows you to create the outcomes that you want. Now, as we look at it, I would say perplex is a 10. It will always be a 10 until the following happens in the game. A, stat manipulation becomes locked in the sense of, without it sounding too complicated, the distance between how much you've manipulated your stat and your opponents manipulate their stat is no more than 3. Okay, so to try to make it less complicated, if you have a figure and the figure you're targeting is 18 defense, energy shield deflection, and is sitting on hindering terrain. So they have a 21 defense. Your attacker has a 10 attack. You've perplexed up their attack by 3. And you would think, okay, well, that would neutralize it. But you have 2 aim agents who are lowering the opponent's defense by 2. Okay, so technically you've manipulated the stats in your favor by 5 when it comes to the attack roll, and your opponent has manipulated by 3. If they made a rule saying that you got 3 perplexes, you can't use those 2 aim guys, or if Hydra goes back and PD goes back to the way it was and giving you plus attack instead of minus defense to your opponent, then yeah, things would be a lot better. You know, or even let's say PD was reversed to how it was in the old days, and you said, I'm going to, you know, perplex down my opponent's defense, and I have 2 Hydra guys. You know, I would still say as long as the stat manipulation isn't gone beyond 3 on each person's favor, then yeah, I think it's all good. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. A, because that is way too complicated for most people to do in the game of HeroClix, is to realize like, oh, on the number line, you know, I've gone up 3 and you've moved the thing down 3, so it has to stay here. You know, so. But anyway, I digress. But Perplex overall is going to be high utility. It's going to be very powerful. It's always going to be useful, and it will always scale in multiplicity. Probability control. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to go through all of the support powers, and I'm going to pretty much try to make it so you can understand this last point on Perplex, why it's probably the most powerful, one of the most powerful powers in the game. If you have 5 supporters on a team, 5 figures with support, you're most likely going to get the max benefit out of it at 3 at best. So once you hit 4, you already have 1 too many. 5, you've already exceeded critical mass. Okay, telekinesis. Really, the most you ever need is 3 at most, and that's you being, you know, very, very greedy. So having 4 doesn't do you any good, and having 5 definitely doesn't do you any good. Outwit. The beginning of the game, if you had 2 outwits, is great. 3 outwits, you're like, oh my gosh. 4, you're like, yes, they have no powers. 5, okay, what else can I do to take away your you know, the shirt off your back? Okay, but as the game progresses and more blows are thrown, you know, between the both parties, your opponent's going to have less powers. And let's say hypothetically you're going to have outwit your entire dial, and those figures are still there. Outwit becomes less valuable, because if you're no longer in a position where outwitting is actually beneficial, you're reaching critical mass. And the more outwits you have, the quicker that becomes, the quicker that time comes in the game. And not only that, in the larger game scales, when we're looking in those above 500 points, guess what's coming out? Power Cosmic. So we're definitely seeing like, you know, you're probably hitting critical mass on your outwit at 3. You're best at 2, unless you really know what you're going to be up against. And even then, 3 is more than enough. Prob, like I said, 2 per 5 characters. And so in most cases, you might see 4. You might have 4. You're most likely not having 5. Okay, and even then, probability control only serves you when you miss a roll, or need to change the outcome of a roll, or when your opponent misses a roll and you want them to hit, which I've had that happen, or your opponent's hit and you want them to miss. So if those circumstances don't come up, guess what? Your probability control is completely worthless. Perplex never is worthless. 10 perplexes is 10 times better than 1 perplex. 5 perplexes is better than 3. 6 is better than 5. You know, no matter how you look at it, more perplex is good. You just have to make sure you don't get too sloppy with your application of perplex. And I'm just saying in general of how these powers work. Now you still have to factor in your dials and your team abilities and your general stats and your power combinations and all that other good jazz we talk about here. you know. But when it comes down to it, Perplex, by far, as a support power, is the most powerful power in the game. The most powerful power in the game technically is hypersonic speed, but that's a conversation for a whole different podcast. Okay, but when we really look at it, Perplex and Multiplicity is strong. It will be stronger, and it doesn't hit critical mass. It doesn't hit this point where it'll blow up in your face, because no matter what, you always can perplex up your defense, all your figures' defenses by 3, and perplex all your opponent's attacks, damage, and defense down by 3. Oh wow! You know, the only way that your Perplex you have too much Perplex is that if you perplexed up everything that you have, every stat that you have, and you perplex down every opponent's your opponent's every stat on their figure that they have by the rule of 3. And most likely that's never going to happen in the game. Never ever going to happen. So this is my overview of Stop and our meta that we have, and just as general look at it. And you might say like, oh, Stop is great, Stop is good, you need to follow Stop. And there's a reason why I say follow Stop, because in general it gives you a great foundation of building your teams on. One thing I want to have him on the show, and hopefully we can do some more test games, and also hopefully he stops changing the rating of the figures after we play to reflect the outcome of the game, and then it sort of makes me look like a liar later. Yes, Rick Jones was rated low, and then you changed him to high. It's Absman with the Numbers Don't Lie thread. We had a online game in which he played Legolas and Adam Warlock, who could transform into mages, and I played Zavin, AIM Agent, Scroll Black Bolt, and Rick Jones. And in that game, oh gosh, in that game, pretty much I can give Scroll Black Bolt a 13 attack on turn 1 and TK him out. I mean, not turn 1, turn 2, because I have to push Rick Jones. But pretty much in that game, if you sort of look at it, I don't have Outwit, and he does once I knock him to mages. But while the figures that he had ranked high in his mathematical system, when they played out, they did okay. But I will say this, as a team, Magus and Legolas together is not a good team construct. There's nothing that either of them do to support each other. Legolas doesn't have good damage reduction for him to be good mastermind fodder, and at 130 points, he's too much of your team for you to use him as mastermind fodder. And Adam Warlock is great at his starting. Really, I like Adam Warlock better than Mage's. Mage's defense power. Anyway, Mage's defense values are lackluster once you hit the end dial. And also, I have scrolls, and he missed some attacks and had some poor rolls, and I had some really great rolls. But check out that game. You can look at it as like the numbers don't lie, and you can see that we used his system. I had a team that averaged like a 5.6 or something. His team should have been like a 8.5 or above. And it'll just show you like how much support powers change things. Okay? All right. This is a Starting Over podcast. And again, big shout out to Rockus21. He's first time listener, and he sent me a request for a podcast, and we have a podcast made to order with extra pickles and onions and a sesame seed bun. All right. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, a.k.a. Dark Logos. And remember, like always, we all got to start over sometime.